This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
The dog that barks the loudest rarely bites. It's the ones that are quiet that you have to look out for and present serious danger. Human beings present their abilities in much the same way. A silent warrior does not give away their battle plan, but rather holds a poker face so you cannot anticipate their next move. The confidence in their abilities is their armor, and their skill is their weapon. Usually, the louder someone speaks, the less they know. If you know, then you know, and you don't need to tell anybody. It takes far more strength to hold your tongue in times of tension. A loud voice can be heard from a mile away, but the silence can sneak up on you and win the fight. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. If you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, then we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. And of course, follow us on all social media so you can find out exactly what we're up to. On this episode, we have a very special episode. It's an episode that I've had in the back of my head for a very, very long time. And tonight, we welcome Kate, see, I told you I'm going to mess up the Italian names, Califano, and Eric Smith to talk about the suffering of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I am a big believer in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, not only for what it can provide for law enforcement, but it's much more than the martial art that it comes out. Thank you so much for coming in tonight.
Of course. Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
We're gonna talk about all this stuff, and we're going to talk about some times when we've gotten tapped out a few times. Before we do that, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. We don't trust anybody as retired police, and we certainly don't trust anybody as podcasters, but we do trust Toyota of Hackensack. So go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you the car. Tell them the Suffering Podcast sent you. They're good guys over there. So, folks, each week we take a question from our audience. This question comes from Signs to Go. What have you learned about yourself this year? That's all life, man. Life is one giant big lesson. If you're not a student of life, you're really missing out. So I'll start with you, Kate. What is one thing you think you've learned about yourself this year?
This year has been, well, if you're counting from January, I suppose, even in, last year, really just growing into who I am and my ideals as far as business in addition to my personal ideals. I think that we've taken a lot of jumps together, as well as me personally. And I think that learning to trust those instincts and not being afraid to jump is something that I've really embraced in the past year.
I think it's, so your gut's never going to steer you wrong. It's something that I work on daily. Like if I get a bad feeling in my gut, 9 times out of 10, if I let it play out long enough, I was right. You know, I don't know whether that's me pushing that narrative towards a place I want to go, but it usually, like if I don't feel right about something, I don't do it. It's that simple. Eric, what do you think? What's one thing you learned?
All right. So one thing I've learned, I think, this past year is that I'm just like stronger than I ever thought that I was. It's been a trying past half a decade for us, but this past year I've made a lot of recovery jumps and things that I didn't think that I'd be able to do, 4 or 5 years ago. So I think just, trusting myself and learning to trust myself has led me to be stronger than I have been.
Yeah, if you don't trust yourself, who the hell in this world are you going to trust, right?
Yep.
So for me, while I am, this is going to sound kind of weird. There used to be a hunger inside of me. Like I could never get enough of this. I could never get enough of that. But I realized that while that hunger for wanting more has been satiated, there is a thirst. So it's a little bit different. I have this constant thirst to make myself better. I have this constant thirst for knowledge. If something looks interesting to me, I'm going to go out and I'm going to try it because I have that in me to just experience all these different things. And some things I like, some things I don't like. And I'm 50 years old, so the things I don't like, I don't have to do anymore. That's the beautiful thing about being 50. But I have that constant thirst inside of me where I'm like, okay, well, let me see what that's about. Let me see what you have to say. Let me see what your lifestyle's like. And I'm not afraid to explore. Where before I might have been a little afraid, a little hesitant. That's a big jump. I don't know if I want to do that. I have just learned to work my life around to this thing where I want to know as much as I possibly can. I'm a student of life. I'm a constant student. I will watch the way you and I don't want to make you self-conscious, but I'm going to watch your body language. I'm going to watch your eye movement. I'm going to watch everything about you, and I'm going to learn from you. And things that come out of your mouth, you're going to hit on something where I'm like, oh, I like that. I like that. And that's what I think that's where before, when I was younger, I thought I knew everything. Now I'm 50. I realize how little I know. So I'm constantly looking for that stuff. So signs to go. Thank you for sending that question in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. So Philadelphia wins the Super Bowl. I'm sorry you have Giants blood in you. It's, oh, God. But I'm so happy to have two people from Pennsylvania coming in, especially this week. Like, this is a big week. For those of you who don't know, we're recording this as we're a couple days away from the world champion, Super Bowl champion, Philadelphia Eagles are about to have their parade. So I'm so appreciative, and I'm glad we connected. So I know a little bit about you. I don't know everything about you. I want to start off by telling us, where'd you grow up? Where are you from?
So I grew up just outside of Gettysburg in a very small town literally called Littlestown. I'm one of 4 boys, and both my parents are awesome people. Grew up on 26 acres of land down there. We don't farm, but we would rent out the land to our local farmers. So we always had corn and soybean and stuff in the fields. So that was cool. Grew up that way.
That's a great way to grow up. Now, you had 4 brothers. Where are you?
Sorry, I had 3 brothers. I'm one of 4.
You're one of 4.
Yeah, so I'm number 3 of 4.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I was the youngest until the youngest came along, and then
you were eating marbles in the corner, and your parents are like, "He'll be fine.
He'll be fine.
He'll be all right."
Yep.
Yeah. So you have to be a little bit tougher. So I'm a younger brother, and younger brothers are always, because we just get tortured, but we also get into more trouble.
I was not that one.
Oh, really?
No, I grew up always the good boy, the quote unquote the golden child is what my brothers called me. So I didn't have the troublemaking portion. That was what would be my older brother, but not oldest.
So it's for me, it was, I can get the liquor easier. I know all the swear words. I learned about sex before everybody else. I learned, I had all those knowledge, and I watch my 2 boys, and I watch how that is repeating itself. My youngest will say things that I know my oldest told him. I'm like, dude, come on, man. Come on. Let him find it out for himself. Kate, where'd you grow up?
I grew up mostly in central Pennsylvania, Mechanicsburg area.
That's Shane Gillis. Shane Gillis.
Shane Gillis I went to private school growing up, and we were a mile down the street from Trinity High School where Shane was.
Yeah.
So we played them in a lot of sports. I think he's only maybe a year younger than me or so. So I'm very familiar with him.
That. I can't remember. I won't remember my wife's birthday, but I'll remember Shane Gillis is from Mechanicsburg.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're from Shane Gillis's place.
Yeah.
Pretty basic upbringing. I played a lot of sports growing up in school, and then as I grew older, I ended up going to community college and then going into the food, bartending, restaurant industry, and just kind of that's what shaped me as a person.
Are you still in the food and beverage industry?
No, I broke out. I broke out. I took a big jump. After being there for 13 to 14 years, I ended up taking an office job. I hated it. Huge pay cut, but I wanted to be able to set a better schedule. So I went there and then moved on from there. And now I actually own a small business, and I work with the nonprofit Adopt A Cop currently as well.
Well, 2 small businesses.
2 small businesses. Yeah, I turned into an entrepreneur. So,
well, so the thing that you get your groundwork done when you're in the food industry, because that's what I did in college. All right, it teaches you a lot about people. It teaches you how to manage money. It teaches you what's good and what's bad. It's just you don't want to stay too long because, watch those managers, right? The managers are the ones that work their way up, and they just don't look like healthy people. But it gives you a nice. But here's the problem. Here's the problem when you're in the food and beverage industry. While you want to go out and have entertainment, you are providing that entertainment to people. So
Right.
there is no weekends off. There is, that stinks. Any type of entertainment business is like that. So it's a grind though.
yeah. But I loved it when I did it,
Yeah.
It's grinding is what I do.
Oh, it's good money. It's really good money, especially for somebody who's young. You got all the money in the world, freedom. You stay up late.
Yeah.
Around after everything closes, you're always having some drinks. So yeah, I get
The
it.
best and the worst job I've ever had is in the restaurant industry. I can't say it enough.
So I always say it's one of those jobs that everybody should do, along with directing traffic. So I have both of those here, because that'll teach you a lot about people.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think that you learned from that? Were you waiting tables? Are you hosting? Are you managing? What were you doing?
I started waiting tables and then I broke into bartending. So at the place I was, it was more fine dining at the time. So waiting was actually more advantageous than bartending, which isn't generally the case.
No, you usually
But then I broke into the downtown scene and started bartending lately there. And it's a different animal.
Yeah.
I don't even know why we call it a restaurant industry at that point in time when you're bartending downtown.
You will
It's
see
a
the best and
different
worst in
job.
people.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So I always ask this people who worked in the food and beverage industry. You learn stuff about people. If you could pick out one thing you learned about people in general, what do you think that would be?
I think it breaks down to not trusting people, unfortunately. I think you learn a lot about what people are willing to bend the truth on when you're serving them drinks specifically, but also just trying to entertain somebody else, how they're trying to come across, what their goals are. Even as something as short of a night of having a drink with a date, you learn a lot about people just by that. And I feel like uh, it puts your guard up a lot.
So I always thought that it made me a better cop, right? Because when you're waiting tables and you're watching them and you're watching their mannerisms, you're learning body language, you're learning that most of what they say or do is bullshit. And it teaches you really how to read people very well, which served me well in my law enforcement career. So I think it was a good training ground for me, but it was also a way for me to pay for college. So yeah, that's pretty much why I did it. So how did you two meet? This is the $1 million question.
So we met, it's 8 years ago ish.
Yeah, new age fairy tale,
New Age
social
fairy
media.
tale. Yep.
Oh, yeah, really?
Social
Met
media,
on social
dating
media?
apps. Yeah.
Yeah, dating apps.
So,
Wait. You've been together 8 years, and I haven't heard too many success stories out of dating apps.
What's funny about that is neither one of us were looking for a relationship. And at least for me, I'm a little bit older than Eric. I had decided I was done wading through the bullshit. So I was very upfront about what I was looking for.
Yep.
I'm laughing because every woman who meets their guy or every guy who meet, they all say the same thing. I'm done. I'm not doing anything. This is it. I'm tired of this bullshit. And lo and behold, they end up meeting.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was probably like the third date when she told me like, "Hey, listen, if you're not gonna be the one, then that's fine, but just let me know."
Yeah.
And like she was just very upfront about it.
I
And
think
like,
our second date was what was it, hot Pilates, like no makeup, like sweating. Like I didn't.
that was super embarrassing for me because I died.
Dude, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
So you bend your body in ways that it's not supposed to bend, and things come out of you,
Yeah.
man.
Also, when it's 105 degrees in the room.
Yeah.
Oh, my
Yeah.
God.
Very telling.
Yeah, it was in it. But like at the same point, it's like when she was in that mindset where she was done with the nonsense, I was actively going through a divorce.
Oh.
And so I was also kind of in that mindset of like, well, I've already done it once. It's going to be a minute before I do it again, kind of deal. And it just kind of like those mindsets meshed perfectly. And so I almost feel like it worked in the way that
Brother.
we went into it without any like forethought.
Brother,
And so we just got to enjoy each other.
you and I got a very, very similar backstory, which we'll talk about later on. Now, were you a cop at the time when you two met?
Yes.
You were.
Yes.
So I always say that's very important because I've watched marriages dissolve from people who got married before they were a cop because the job changes you.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric, you are an active law enforcement officer.
Yes. Yes, I am.
That job will change you. It'll change your demeanor. It'll change your outlook on life. The marriages that I've seen, and I'd love to do a statistical analysis. I'm just talking about from what I've seen. The marriages that seem to happen after you're on the job last, and the ones that happen before, those are the ones that dissolve because you know what you were getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you knew him as a cop. You didn't know him before a cop. Now, your first marriage, were you married first?
So I was with her through the entire process. So when I first met her, I had already applied to the State Police Academy. I was on like the stage 4 of 6 to get in. So like I was pretty much guaranteed as long as I just didn't mess up. So yes, it was before technically, but I was already in that process. I was actively working as campus security. So I was in law enforcement in its own way. I had a different mentality of what the relationship was versus what she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see how that would cause an issue.
Yeah.
So you get together. Have you ever dated a cop before?
No, military.
Okay, well, okay. There's some cross pollination there, but the shift work gets you. Shift work will take years off of your life. But here's the thing. I met my wife. I was already a cop, and it was hard for her to get used to that shift work. I was working midnights, and she'd call me at 2 in the afternoon. I'm like, well, time out. We can't do this. we can't do this because at the time I always kept my phone on. I don't even keep it on half the time. What is something that you learned about dating a cop that was kind of foreign to you?
Honestly, there really wasn't that much that was foreign to me when it came to law enforcement based on my relationships with military. I've always had my own schedule.
Mhm.
I've always been fairly good at filling that. So he worked midnights, he worked overnights as well. So I was just used to that. And again, I think really what lends itself to that is the fact that when we began our relationship, I already very much knew who I was and what I was looking for. So I mean, that was very upfront with that. So in dating law enforcement, it didn't affect me, I feel, individually, because I knew what I was getting into and I knew what I was willing to, I guess, deal with and versus what I wasn't.
But he's going to bring trauma home. You see something not very nice, and you come home, and what's the traditional way we handle it? Hey, how was your day? It was good. It's fine. It's all right.
I also feel like too that's so I part of the reason why we worked is I kind of didn't do that as much. I
That's a big
included
thing.
her a little bit into the trauma. Um, One, not entirely by choice. We were forced into trauma, but when she asked me what was going on with the day, like I was messaging her throughout the shift as much as I could, and I was telling her like what was going on because like I did that the first time and it didn't go well. So I was like,
Mhm.
well, I'm not going to do that again.
Well, it's good that you learn from your mistakes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it took me after retirement before I finally started letting my wife in, because I still ain't I am not figuring out women. I don't even try anymore, because you women are enigmas. But what I learned is when your silence allows your wife to make up all this shit in her head. Oh, he's shutting down. Oh, he must not love me anymore. Oh, he's isolating himself. Oh, maybe he's having an affair. Oh, that whole thing, and it just doesn't breed well. It doesn't work in a marriage. Um, I don't know how my wife put up with me, but she did. She did. So you guys get together. You work this odd relationship. Why'd you pull the trigger and get married? Like, because you go through a divorce once, you don't want to go get kicked in the nuts twice.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the sticking point was for me because I remember after the first one, I had told myself like, all right, well, I tried it once, like maybe it's not for me. I'm not going to do it again. And I think the one of the biggest things for us that helped us get to that point was the trauma that I had mentioned earlier that we were forced into. It really like solidified our bond and our not just like reliance on each other, and like it kind of helped put the final nail in the coffin that yep, this is the person that I will be with until the end.
What do you mind telling us what it was?
Yeah, of course. So when I had met Kate, I had about 4 years on the job and um, met her in like September, October of 2019. And then in April of 2020, I was involved in a very serious, near fatal on duty car crash. I was handling a crash scene on a bridge right outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And with my emergency lights, sirens on, everything, we got um, utterly crushed from behind by a Sprinter van at impact of 70 miles an hour.
Holy shit! Were you in the car?
Thankfully, yes. So the craziest thing about this whole crash is that I had literally gotten into the car 5 seconds before the car hit me. So like I got in, closed my door, looked to my partner who's in the driver's seat, and somebody buzzed us and shook the car. I'm like, hey man, we're gonna get hit. I'm gonna go pop flares, and then boom, hit.
Hmm.
So 5 seconds later, I would have been at the trunk of the car getting flares and probably wouldn't be here today. If it was 5 seconds earlier, I would have been between my police car and the truck that we were investigating and would have been pinned, probably not here today. So like it literally happened even to the point where like when I got into the car, I had closed the door, which helps the structural integrity of the car for the way that they're tested in crashes.
Right.
So like I was unrestrained, my partner was, and we both just got all sorts of hurt, injured, everything, and I'm still dealing with that today.
So people don't realize that the number one killer of cops is car accidents.
Yeah, and that's something I never even realized too until it happened to me. Because like every time I went to work, I'm like, oh yep, something might happen. Maybe I'll get stabbed, shot, punched in the face, elbowed, kicked in the groin. Like, who knows? But
yeah, and then you gotta get out of the locker room and go hit the streets.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had never like really prepared for the car, because the car is always your safe space. You're like, this is my home office. This is where I go to, like, oh, I had a bad incident, go in the car, unwind. I'm home, go to the next call. And so to be hurt there was like, it didn't never cross my mind.
Well, statistically, if you drive long enough, statistically, you're going to get into a crash. It's going to happen. Cops are in their cars, patrol officers are in their cars more than the average person. Your shift were 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever you work, you're in the car for 80% of that.
Yep.
So statistically, it makes perfect sense, but just the same. And also, people don't realize that when the lights are flashing, people like to make a beeline for those flashing because they're looking what you're doing. So when you first heard that, and it's being involved with a cop. You weren't married at the time, but you're being involved with a cop, knowing that something like this could happen, but you never think it's going to happen, and when it does happen,
Yeah, that was interesting. Actually, it's kind of terrible on my part. His crash happened around 6 o'clock in the
It was
morning.
6
It was
a.m.
early. I had to work a double shift at the restaurant that day, and we had only been dating for around 6 months.
You were at iHeart.
Was I at iHeart?
Yeah.
iHeart.
You were sleeping.
It might have been the. Oh, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before you go any further, you never worked in Harrisburg. Used to have a restaurant. It was a chain restaurant. It was called Doc Holliday's.
I know what you're talking about. I did not have the pleasure. No.
Okay, I know it's a chain restaurant, but that had the best chili I've ever eaten in my entire life.
Oh man.
Oh my God, it was incredible. But again, I digress. I had to get that out there because I've always been looking for that, just to have the chili again.
Keep my eye out for a Doc Holliday's.
Yeah, we'll let you know.
So good.
Yeah. So his sergeant,
Corporal.
your corporal. Thank you.
Mhm.
He must have called me a dozen times, and I didn't answer him. And I finally got one of the voicemails. Because I was, I don't know, sleeping, getting ready for work, whatever it may have been. And I listened to the one where I was like, hey, just so you know, Eric's face is fine. And he's he's cognizant and he's sitting up now. And I listened to that and I was like, what? Because he didn't leave a message for any of the other calls. So I just thought, he's just, it was the wrong number. It's like, it's unknown number on my phone. So I called him back. I was like, hi. And he's like, yeah. Eric's face is fine. He said it so many times that your face was fine. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like, oh, he was involved in an incident. They're over here at Hershey Med. This and that. Tell me about the accident. So I called work, got off, and then began that. So it was a very interesting feeling. I immediately panicked and then kind of was trying to like process the whole situation. Like, should I be this worried? I didn't have a lot of information. It was a new relationship. My gut instinct was, where's his family? Frankly, at the time, I was kind of worried about his, ex-wife at that time. Is she involved? Does she need to know? Like, I'm kind of unsure about what's going on right now. So we got a little more information and headed to the hospital. And it was very surreal. I didn't feel panicked once I started driving there, which was weird.
It's a good attitude to have because you don't want to get nervous until there's something to get nervous about, because if you're nervous about what the unknown is, then that builds anxiety. By the time you get there, you're all revved up and you're in pain. So, and you being panicky in your situation that you're in is not going to help him. So so you both are entering this relationship unlike any other relationship in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might want to write a book about this stuff and help people out. So the do's and don'ts of how to get involved. So your recovery process had to be significant.
It's still significant. So the crash happened in April of 2020, and it's now February of 2025, and I'm still on medical leave.
Wow. So
you're 100% medical leave. No work.
Important to note that COVID is just now kind of starting to happen.
When the crash happened.
Right, yeah. We were just in lockdown in April.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He was released from the hospital within 6 hours of being hit. which is nutty.
Like if you see the pictures, like I was messed up. So like, no, the scar on the side of my head was from when I got bit by a dog when I was 5, but the rest of the scars on my forehead were from the crash.
Yeah, but
And
dude, chicks dig scars.
of course they do. Yeah,
Here we are.
and particularly with good stories behind it.
Yeah, that's right. You can make up anything you want. Yeah, I was wrestling a bear. That's
Yep.
what's happened.
Yeah.
The key component to any law enforcement officer being the best version of themselves is through education. Sherry Alsop is a leader in providing that education to police agencies, preparing them for the all too frequent dealings with sexual assault victims.
You've seen Sherry on episode 169 of the Suffering Podcast. She survived incest and almost daily sexual assault, so she comes from a place of experience and true understanding.
Sherry has the intelligence, commitment, and compassion to open the eyes of those on the front lines, while providing the tools to effectively deal with a difficult situation. Sherry's instruction comes from experience and multiple certifications.
Training with Sherry will offer on-site training, customized schedules, specialized instruction tailored from a victim's perspective.
You are going to hear Sherry's heart-wrenching but inspiring survivor story. Learn proprietary trauma-informed training techniques, uncovered victim-centered interview methods while earning continuing education credits according to your state guidelines. To be the best, you must learn from the best. Let Sherry also guide you through the delicate cases of sexual assault from a victim's point of view.
Be a source of comfort to those victims affected by these traumatic experiences while producing a solid investigation and uncovering details that often go unnoticed.
To find out more or to contact Sherry Alsop, go to sherryalsop.com. That's SherryAllsup.com.
Crash happened at 6 a.m. I was home on the couch by 3 p.m. the same day.
Really?
Yeah, just because like they didn't know how to handle, they were trying to push people out of the hospital so much because it was such an unknown epidemic at the time. Like they're like, well, we can't have, and she couldn't come into the hospital and see me. The only reason I had a visitor was because we kind of PSP strongholmed our way in, but they only allowed my captain and my major into the hospital with me, like
They
people
didn't
that
let
I
them in
hardly
at
know.
first either,
Yeah,
I
they
don't
didn't let him
think.
in at first either.
That's crazy because an officer gets injured and something this severe, and your partner also. Usually it's a blue wall outside, and now there's nobody. You're wearing a mask, can't breathe.
I pulled up to the hospital and it was about half a block from where the door was, and he's just sitting in a wheelchair
Like by myself,
by
waiting for a roll
himself,
up.
waiting for me to pull up. And I was like, Eric?
Yep, it was So like that was quite a day, and that early on in our relationship too was like again a test for the two of us, and we killed it.
Right, because Kate could have said, I can't deal with this.
She could have pushed it all off on my ex-wife or off onto my mom or dad because like they were there. She was closer, but like my parents were only 45 minutes away, and like they knew about it too, and like they were in communication. Like she could have, done the job initially and worked through the communication. Like, okay, here's Eric, deal with him now. But nope, she jumped all in. Her and her mom like set up a recovery cove for me on the chase of the couch. But when I got home and like did the whole thing, she had to check the blood pouch that was draining from my head every day for the first 5 days. Like
it actually makes sense because one of the first things you told me, you said to him, look, if you're not the one, then just tell, it's fine. Just let me know. It would be a shame if you didn't give him that same courtesy, and it sounds like you did, which is my hat's off to you.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of people that would have just scared people to death. Because when something like that happens, there are certain brands of people that'll say, oh, this is an omen. This is telling me something. you know those people.
I'm Italian. I know those people.
I wasn't trying to pigeonhole anybody, but yes, you are 100% correct. And that's a pessimist versus an optimist. But you see all these now, see all these injuries on you now. What exactly was your damage going into this?
So I had a cut that went from my eyebrow up across my forehead up to about halfway across my skull, and essentially that whole part of my scalp had been removed that they had to like reattach. And then when they reattached it, they inserted a tube down across my temple to help with drainage for the first like week that I was out. My orbital was completely fractured and swollen shut. My surgeon said he stopped counting stitches after 100. I had, severe concussion, traumatic brain injury, the whole 9 yards, whiplash down my neck. Like my traps, neck, upper back and stuff were so tight and swollen that like I was always sitting like this. Like I constantly keep catching myself doing that, and I try and bring them down because it will just re-aggravate that. It tore my shoulder apart and had to get surgery on a torn labrum. And, thankfully, all of the cosmetic stuff fixed on its own. I didn't need to get surgery on my eye socket. I didn't need to get, all the stitches healed perfectly. The tube drained the way it was supposed to drain and was removed without any issue. So now the shoulder after the surgery fixed and through rehab is good. Full range of motion, a little bit of numbness there, but like it's good. So now the residual problems is all traumatic brain injury, concussion recovery, post concussion syndrome, getting my eyes to work together again because it got so messed up. Like my vertigo symptoms, dizziness symptoms, working on all that kind of stuff has been the longing injuries that we're still trying to work on.
Physical injuries heal, and then there's long-lasting injuries. When something happens like this, it screws with your mind. You just went to work. Like you went to work like everybody else goes to work who's not in law enforcement. And this stuff happens to you. Did it screw with your mind a little bit?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Part of the recovery process is I've been in, counseling for 3-ish years of the 5.
Closer to 4.
Closer
You
to
ran it
4.
pretty quick.
I went to, again, I think that's one of the differences too, is like, what I handled it. I handled it, I think, pretty well overall, like all things considering. Like when I first FaceTimed Kate after the crash, like I was cracking jokes. I was like, oh, hey, something happened.
You're delusional. You have brain damage.
That's true.
So.
Yeah.
Now he's got an excuse. If he says something inappropriate, he has an excuse to get out.
Terrible.
Yeah, I use it all the time.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that wasn't me. That was a traumatic brain injury.
Yeah, that's my concussion talking.
Been your chauffeur for 5 years.
It's true.
But you now have to switch roles. You went from girlfriend to almost nursemaid. Were you guys living together?
No.
Oh, we
So
moved in together.
I essentially moved in. Yeah, because at that point, like because I was going through the divorce, I had a house with my ex-wife, and I also had my own apartment. And then she owned her own townhouse, and so I went back to her townhouse to start, still having my own apartment. And then we just kind of, as the recovery was going and becoming a lot more intense, we just eventually decided, like, yep, we're in. When she didn't leave me, I was like, okay, she can stick around for a while.
This might be a keeper.
Yeah, I guess we're doing this.
Yes, we're doing this.
So what was some of the things that you did in order to rehab yourself? Not only your body, but your mind as well. I know you were going to therapy, but was it just strictly rehab stuff, like the normal run of the mill?
I mean, yes and no.
I think to Eric's credit, one thing that he has done and continues to do is he's been finding additional ways to help him get back to work. Something about him that I admire is that he loves his job and he's very dedicated to that. So he's still doing his, therapy sessions 3 days a week. He still has his counseling. He still has
that's
his
your
vision
job
therapy.
now.
Right, correct.
Yeah, that's my day-to-day at the time.
But he also looks for other ways to help improve those things. So he did a 3-week therapy session at, help me with that name.
It was the Moss Rehab Institute for Brain Health. It's out in Philadelphia, that Philadelphia, Willow Grove, Pennsylvania area, and it's only for veterans and first responders that suffer traumatic brain injuries from either on duty or et cetera. And it's to help them recover. And so I sought that out and applied for it and got in. That was not required by any means, but I want to get back to work so bad. I'm gonna look at these other options.
Well, did you play any contact sports growing up as a backdrop to this?
Yes,
you did.
Yes.
What'd you play?
I wrestled from, kindergarten to 12th grade. I played soccer, tried football once or twice. I liked soccer more. I've always been active in sports. I mean, with 3 brothers, we wrestle around all the time,
So the reason I asked that is now you're going to, did you keep up with your physical fitness as you were an officer? And now you go from this where you're totally convalesced and you can't really get up and do things. And that's hard. That's really hard. But here's the problem I don't have a problem with doctors, but doctors know medicine. Doctors rarely know biology. So they're going to prescribe, take this, call me in the morning. You've heard that one. But doctors don't realize that the body has this ability, if you do the right things, to heal itself. And it's kind of why we're here tonight, because I want to start talking about Brazilian Jiu Jitsu.
Yes.
I discovered Brazilian Jiu Jitsu very late. I heard about it forever, and like every podcaster in the world, I figure I got to try it because Joe Rogan does it. No, that's not why I did it. But I had some friends who were really big into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and mixed martial arts and things like that. And I said, you know what? There's some people who I really admire that do this. I want to give it a shot. So what made you step into those schools?
So it was like Kate was saying, is when we were, 2 years after the recovery process, when I was able to start exercising again, when I was able to start walking more and like doing these exercises, like I was still struggling, and we wanted to find something. At that point, I was really missing being a police officer. I was missing the hands-on stuff. I was missing driving my car. I was honestly missing writing my police reports, which sounds really dumb, but like that's how much I loved the job. And so we were trying to find something to hit that was reasonable. And so we were big fans of watching UFC together. I wrestled for the large majority of my younger adulthood. And I always wanted to, try jiu-jitsu, but it was never in the cards. And I guess it was like one time we were watching UFC together, and she was like, I think I would try that. And I was like, oh. And then so we like sat down and like talked about it, and we're like, is this something we should actually like look into? And so we started looking into it, and we found a nonprofit called Adopt A Cop BJJ, which is an awesome nonprofit that they sponsor active duty law enforcement and actually pay for their jiu-jitsu training from start to blue belt,
right?
For
because
18 months.
Because it's costly.
Yeah, it's expensive.
It's expensive.
I mean, a normal Brazilian jiu-jitsu membership by us is like $150 a month.
Well,
per
yeah.
person.
Well, then you got to buy the gi, and then you got to buy the no gi for the times,
counseling for the classes.
which I looked at the no gi, the whatever it was, and I'm looking at it and I go, yeah, I'm just not going to look good in that. There's just there's no hiding anything in the no gi. The first class, did you take one of those introductory classes where they got you rolling and stuff like that?
Yeah, so we did. Through the Adopt A Cop program, we were looking at their affiliated gyms in our area. Because we're like, all right, well, if they're associated with this program, like they're going to be law enforcement friendly, which will probably mean that they'll be nice to me being concussed. And so the one in our area was actually running a program at that time, like sign up and your first 13 weeks are like half cost, and it's a fundamentals introduction program. And so we're like, sweet,
we gave you
let's
a
do
gi
it.
that was really truly just pajamas. It was not even
It was
I don't even think there was a collar on it.
There was no collar on it. Like the belt was like a one size fit all belt.
Yeah.
So like
it's like you go in the Halloween store and say jiu-jitsu costume.
That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
It was a different color than everybody else's.
Yeah. So everyone knew you were a beginner.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we took one of those we took that intro class, and then after that class, she was immediately hooked, which I was really surprised with and kind of worried about, because she'd never done anything like it before. And it's aggressive. It's a lot.
It's the great equalizer.
Yeah.
It's the great equalizer of any type of training. I've been training since I was 13 years old, in the gym, on the field, whatever it was. I was into it. I was always willing to try it. And I've done some really hard things, including training for a triathlon. And I will say this wholeheartedly. There is nothing in the world like training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I have never sweat so much. I have never felt so good. I've never felt tighter. I've never been more confident. My attitude changed for the better. And trust me, I needed some attitude adjustment. And so here's the great thing. It's humbling.
Mm-hmm.
Kate, somebody your size can tap out somebody your size, Eric.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's the great equalizer. But it does so much more than that. And this is kind of why, because specifically as it pertains to law enforcement, I made a comment on a show where I believe that every cop should be or working towards a purple belt. And I know that's kind of pie in the sky type of stuff. Not everybody's meant to be a purple belt. But I said it not so much for the physical training portion of it. I said it for the mental training, the confidence. Mm-hmm. So when you know what you know, you don't have to tell anybody what you know. You just know. Think about it. Think about where you are now. And I understand your training is very limited because of your injuries, but even knowing the stuff that you know, think about yourself. Put yourself back on the street as a cop. When somebody's spouting off at you, calling you a motherfucker, and they're going at you and stuff, you'll have the ability to just sit back and smile and say, "Look, man, you have no idea.
Yeah,
you have no idea what's about to come."
And like for reference, like we're not very large in jiu-jitsu yet. Like we're still lowly 2-stripe white belts. Like we're not even a blue belt yet. We're not a purple belt by any means.
We're beginners.
We're beginners. And even with my
best
2-stripe white belt beginner knowledge, like I can think of multiple things that I could use in arresting somebody, in suspect control, And, even just the sense of like, I remember the first time that like she put me in a chokehold and like having that feeling of like, oh my God, like I'm being compressed and I don't know what to do. Like now, okay, I felt that before. I know how to breathe through it. I know how to think through it. I know this isn't the end. Same way you get when you get pepper sprayed in the academy. It's so you can be like, oh, this is not the end of the world.
It's a confidence builder.
It's a confidence builder. You're like, okay, if I get sprayed with this because it's on my belt, I can fight through it. Now with jiu-jitsu, it's like if someone puts their hands on me, I can fight through it.
The big thing now is de-escalation and escalation within police. So certain things will happen in the blink of an eye, and if you have the confidence to know that, okay, I can go hands-on with somebody, and I know I'm confident in my abilities where I can do what I need to do in order to make this person comply. What it'll actually do if people train actively for this stuff is it'll actually cut down on shootings. All right, which is, I think the country is all in agreement. Nobody wants to shoot or get shot. And if you have the confidence to do that stuff, your threat level changes. I've said for years, and please don't take this as a knock, and a lot of women do, a women officer will have a different threat level than a male officer. Somebody I'm not the biggest guy you're going to come in contact with, but you would have the right to shoot somebody my size before I would have the right to shoot somebody your size. You're right, in a court of law.
Right.
And that's just fact. But with jiu-jitsu, all of a sudden that changes. That changes. And with the and that's something that people don't realize. So now all of a sudden it cuts down on all that stuff. And everybody's happy. You're happy, you're safer, you're more in control of what you have and what you do. So it makes perfect sense. There was a big movement with the defund the police. No, fund the police, fund this stuff.
Yeah.
Because this is the stuff that's going to make a difference.
Yeah, there's actually been several studies now, which is a little bit newer. We found a lot of ours off of Invictus LEO, if you're not familiar with who they
Yes.
are. And they've done studies. It's not just shootings that are down. It's injuries to both law enforcement as well as the bad guys, if you will, the perpetrators, the victims, all of them. Injuries are down. And what that is, I think it's one of your favorite quotes.
Yeah, it's ineffective force gives the appearance of excessive force.
So what does it say that again?
Ineffective force gives the appearance of excessive force.
You're 100% correct. You watch people, and we all know these cops who should never be cops. They got in through whatever type of hook that they had, and they become cops, and they feel like they got to prove themselves, and they're always going to bark the loudest, right? I did an Instagram live tonight that says, if you scream loud enough, nobody will hear you. So you have those cops out there that need to prove themselves because they're not confident in their abilities. I will say this. So I know some truly dangerous men that are Brazilian Jiu Jitsu practitioners, and they are the smallest, nicest smile. They're the nicest guys in the world. And I use this as a lesson with my son. So my 15-year-old son is taller than me, and we're in the gym together, and there was a guy sitting next to us who, and I'm looking at him, and I've seen him before. I think I seen him on the mat somewhere. I wasn't quite sure, but then you look at the ears and you're like, oh, okay. And then I recognized him. Then I remembered who it was, and he said something to my son like, "Hey, great job, doing some smiles and everything." And my son said something. I said, "Don't ever judge a book by its cover, because you see that man right there. That man will destroy you." And he goes, "How do you know?" And I said, "Because aside from me recognizing him, he's got the telltale signs that he does some sort of mixed martial arts. You just don't know it because his demeanor is so calm, friendly." And that's what I found. Is that something you found? They're just nice people.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, like the whole community with Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, the camaraderie you get with it, it speaks to so much more than just the actual physical aspect of controlling someone. Yeah. And that's part of the reason why we fell in love with it the way that we did. And that's part of the reason why it's so good for law enforcement. It's like it's
almost like controlled trauma bonding, if you will. Like you're putting yourself in these positions, and you're so vulnerable. It's hard not to bond with somebody on that level because you're completely bare.
So there's some truth to Fight Club.
Yeah.
There 100% is some truth to Fight Club. There's freedom in it.
Yeah.
When you have traded sweat and blood with somebody, you are by default bonded to them. And there's man, I was the instructor This guy named George. He is 150 pounds, and it doesn't take him more than 10 seconds to tap me. And he'll do it. I'm like, dude, come on, man. Stop using me as a dummy. Please stop using me as a dummy because it's starting to hurt. But then you smile and you pat each other on the back and you're friendly and it's a great experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the problem is getting the bosses to buy into this. That's the big problem. I don't know how we do that.
It's still a question. It's still a question, but the overall, I think, mentality with, or not mentality, the number of cops who are training jiu-jitsu right now is leaps and bounds more than what it was 2 years ago.
Yes.
Leaps and bounds more than what it was 5 years ago. And like the more cops that we get to train, the more other cops will start to train. Because, if you're on an incident with, somebody and like, okay, I know that they're not physically fit. I know that they don't run, they don't do anything like that, but they have a great sense of knowledge. Cool. You might want them on certain scenes, but if I have to wrestle with somebody, I want somebody who knows how to grapple, who's going to help me take this person down. And so if they see that one cop who does train jiu-jitsu do one quick little leg sweep into a Kimura hold to take this guy down and has the suspect in handcuffs in 3 seconds who was very combative, you're like, I want to learn that.
Yeah.
And then
if you're professional.
If you're professional.
Yeah.
And then you can go ask that cop, like, hey, where'd you learn that? And he can be like, oh, I trained jiu-jitsu at this place. And then that's another cop going to that gym. Like, that's how it spreads.
There was a guy I met out in Parker, Arizona. I was doing a class out there, and he's probably 60-something years old, and he was a jiu-jitsu guy. And he was in great, like phenomenal shape. And he goes, I've been training jiu-jitsu for 30 years. But one of the things that he did to try to implement it into his police department is he somehow convinced the bosses that, listen, give me 1 hour a week with 3 or 4 of the guys, and we'll work that in whatever shift. And the bosses agreed to it. So what he would do is, and I know an hour with 3 or 4 guys is not going to change the world, but it changed them. It gave them more confidence. It gave more physically fit. I mean, the worst thing you'll ever see on the road is a cop with a big belly and white powdered donut dust on his uniform. So there's so many different benefits. But what it does mentally. Now, getting back to your injury, you're in this world of jiu-jitsu, even if it's a limited capacity. What did it do for you, A, physically, and what did it do for you, B, mentally?
Physically, I mean, it got me moving again. It got
Makes you supple.
Yeah, it's getting me at being active, which is what all of my doctors have told me to do. They're like, don't stay sedentary. If you stay sedentary, there's no need for you to be on bed rest with your injuries. Like, you need to be doing things. Otherwise, if you don't do things, you'll downgrade in your recovery process. So it got me out doing this stuff. It got me started hitting that physical itch. Like, I was burning calories that I wasn't burning before. Even if in my limited scope of just doing the drills, like with Kate only, like I'm still burning 1,000 calories because it's that physically demanding.
So the cool thing is when you guys have an argument, you go take it out on the mat and guarantee by the end of that, whatever 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever you do,
it's done.
It's done. There's no way you can stay mad at somebody.
Yeah.
Or maybe you throw one of the roll sessions.
It's funny. We've heard both sides. We've heard from a lot of people like never do jiu-jitsu with your spouse. And like, I honestly can't imagine doing it with most other people. Like, I feel like it's been really healing for both of us. I feel like it makes us vulnerable. Eric, generally speaking, I think is the more emotional one out of the pair of us somehow.
Yeah.
And it just opens me up to being vulnerable. And that's something that doesn't just happen when you're at home or before the accident, even when he would come home with issues on work or on the job and vice versa. Something like jiu-jitsu forces you to look those things in the eye and be vulnerable to it. And I know that sounds silly when you're just rolling around on a mat, but there's freedom and simplicity.
So your dating history of military guys, and you notice from the police world, those officers or those vets that your military ex-boyfriends, sorry, bring this up, got to bring it up, their bonds are strong. Your bonds with officers who you've chewed the same dirt with are strong. Now, all of a sudden, what it does, and you want to talk about the best marriage counseling in the world, you guys rolling around and chewing that same dirt and rolling and doing the same moves and working with each other, it actually has that ability to do the same thing that cops and vets have. You you create, I don't want to say trauma bonds because but physical hurt bonds. So it makes all the sense in the world that why you would say you don't want to roll around with anybody else. Plus, listen, the thing about jiu-jitsu is it's not gay as long as you don't make eye contact, right?
So back to your thing about the how it helped me mentally is I really feel like it was a turning point for me with I was definitely in like some bouts of depression from the injury, just from, losing something that I loved at that point.
All of a sudden,
And,
your future's in the balance.
In the
you
balance,
don't know.
yeah. I don't know if the department's going to keep me on this long. I don't know if I'll ever return to patrol. I don't know if I can even return to work, period. And so having this outlet in jiu-jitsu it got me out of that first funk, and was like a big reason that like I started my therapy was because of jiu-jitsu. Because I was like, man, I didn't realize how down I was until I left class feeling so high, feeling so good. Leaving that class, I was like, wow, okay, this is what I felt like before the crash.
Yeah, you're chemically, your endorphins, your norepinephrines, all those things are firing. All your cylinders are firing. You're feeling, I guess, for me, if I was in your shoes, it would make me feel like a man again. Because when you're sitting home alone, I remember after my shooting, I stopped going to the gym. I stopped running. I stopped doing all that stuff. I was in just this deep, dark hole. And as I started to come out of it, I started to find my way back. And it really just made me start to feel like a man again. Because there's nothing as depressing for a man than to no longer feel like a man. You feel like less than.
Yeah.
Then that's when the danger starts happening, because then you start looking for things outside that'll make you feel like more of a man.
Yeah. I mean, even to the point, like if you go to you get the same endorphin high when you go for a run or when you go for a lift or whatever your physical activities of choice is. But what's cool about jiu-jitsu, and it's different about that, is when you're going a run, even if you're going on a group run, it's still you. Like you're running with the group, but it's you. If you go to a jiu-jitsu class, it's you and at least one other person who's physically touching you, who's doing that drill with you, who's talking with you, even if it's just like, hey, don't put your arm there. Like that's still communication to you, and like that's something that's something to be said. I mean, there's a show Alone on Netflix and stuff where all these people, these big survivalists, are tapping out because they miss people, and jiu-jitsu puts you as close to people as you can pretty much get.
Well, that's what you brought up, something pretty cool. So when you're rolling around on the ground and you're working, right? You're not going full bore, but you're also not taking it easy. And your partner is trying, what they're trying to accomplish with whatever you're trying to put them, whatever move you're putting on. You're like, no, your arm needs to go a little higher. And you're actively trying to make your partner better. And that's what the rolling around does. Is like, no, you got to go here, go a little lower, put your leg up. And that's such an important thing, because it's not about who is better. It's about making each other better.
Yep.
Right. And that's that it applies perfect to law enforcement. It applies to just the world in general. It's like you're just trying to make those around you better. So now, this is always the cardinal fear of every man who's married. You worry about your wife. Okay. You have the burden of knowledge. You've seen the worst of the worst. You've seen man's inhumanity to man. And when I say man, I say people. But now your wife has this skill. As new as you say that it is, you have this little skill. Does it give you any confidence in, she's good, she'll take care of herself?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've said that to our friends a couple of times, like before, like they would, push or talk smack to Kate or whatever it might be or anything. And I'm just like, in the back of my head, I'm like, they don't know what she knows. Like, even if they might be strong about to hold her down, it's like, but I feel confident that she, with her with the amount of knowledge that she has, that like, yeah, I have so much more confidence that she'll be safe without me, that I don't need to be there protecting her all the time. Like if she's walking home somewhere or she's out by herself, I'm like, yep, she knows some things to, at least keep herself from danger.
So I boxed growing up, and I always thought boxing was a great workout, right? And I boxed until I was about 24. And, I always used to say that when I felt, after I stopped boxing, I'm like, man, I need to get punched in the face. I know that sounds crazy. Like I need to take a punch in the face because I'm starting to forget what it's like. And it's the same thing with jiu-jitsu. It's like that you need to experience some physical pain in order to grow.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is no growth without a little bit of struggle, without a little bit of suffering, right? That's kind of the whole reason for this show. And now you guys are taking Brazilian Jiu Jitsu to the next level with this seminar stack that you're talking about, which is how we got connected.
Mhm.
Tell everybody how we got, because it's kind of weird. Tell everybody how we got connected.
In starting jiu-jitsu, as Eric had said, we found Adopt A Cop BJJ. And originally what had happened is we decided that we wanted to donate. But we didn't want to just write some small measly check. We wanted to be able to actually donate to them. So instead of just writing them a small measly check, we decided to throw a fundraiser and we called it Seminar Stack. Last year was our first event. It was great. We had seminars and workshops. We had police specific seminars. We had regular jiu-jitsu seminars. We had giveaways and free public seminars with things like mobility and nutrition, other workouts, all about health and wellness and community, which is what the goal was. And through that, we were able to donate then to Adopt A Cop. So in that, we have now made Seminar Stack a business. I have made Seminar Stack a business. I took it to the next level. And then shortly after that, about a week later, Adopt A Cop called us. And I now also am the new program director for Adopt A Cop.
It's wonderful.
So founder of Seminar Stack, new program director for Adopt A Cop. Bit off a little more than I could chew, but here we are. And how I met you is in that first year, and even now still, we were out of our kitchen, and it was just me trying to do something, and Eric, as my loving and supportive husband, was trying to help me the best that he could. And I was just sending messages to people on Instagram. I'm hitting up Joe Rogan. I'm throwing, Jocko a message, David Goggins, anybody that I thought might be interested in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, in the health and wellness, MMA field, supporting law enforcement that I should or shouldn't have messaged, whether they run their account or not, I was throwing out messages. And in doing so, I talked about it to everybody that I knew, including my personal trainer. My personal trainer, Brock Wallet, out in Mechanicsburg with NGX, brought up your name to me and was like, do you know this guy? You should follow his account. So in doing so, I started following you. We saw you. And I was like, I'm just going to message him, because I message everybody, whether or not they listen to me is something else. And you got back to me. And
I'm not the idiot who has farms out my account. I don't have that I don't have Joe Rogan money yet to have somebody work my account. When a law enforcement background agency comes to me, I always give them. I was just on the phone with somebody today down in Florida. They're doing some amazing stuff, and they're like, "Well, I didn't think you would follow me back." I said, "Of course I'll follow you back. Whatever I accomplish in this world, I still got that blue heart. I'm still a cop at heart." And I will always fight for cops to become better, to become safer, to go home at night and not have to deal with the same stuff that I had to deal with. So listen, when you talk to your trainer, say, hey, thank you for introducing me, because I think I like what you do. The Adopt A Cop program, that is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But it's that program, it's amazing. It's so cool. And it's awesome that she's now a part of it, and I get to be kind of by association to help out. Like she was saying, like when we started the Seminar Stack because of Adopt A Cop, like it was also in its own way, it was her thing, but it also gave me something to do throughout the day. Like my day-to-day job now, while I'm on medical leave, is all of my therapies, is my recovery, is my vision therapy, my physical therapy, my counseling, my all those stretches, exercise that comes with it. But like that gets mundane, and being a police officer, like our job is anything but mundane. And so I needed something else. And so I jumped in with this help and jumped in with Adopt A Cop, and it's brought us closer. It's got us here talking with you. Like it's awesome.
Oh, it's going to take you a lot better places than here. This is not a big deal. So, but what, as far as your relationship, now it seemed like it was pretty good before you started training. What's training brought into your relationship together?
I mean, at its most baseline, a mutual hobby. I mean, how it's something that we both enjoy doing together. We enjoy going to class together. We enjoy watching, grappling matches together. We enjoy talking about jiu-jitsu. Like it's just something we can do together that we always have, that we also both started together. It's not like oh, I like football before I met her. And she's like, oh, I also like football. And now we like it together. Like we never did jujitsu. We started it together. We found it together. And now it's part of our life.
And, it's one of those things where the longer you do it, the more you love it. And it's fluid too. You're being a two-stripe white belt. Well, guess what? That doesn't mean you can't come up with something nobody's ever seen before.
Mm-hmm.
And it would work perfectly. So that's why I say it's fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why don't you tell everybody when Seminar Stack's happening?
Yeah. So this year's Seminar Stack, it's our second year. It's going to be August 2nd, and that's at Hollywood Casino in Grantville, Pennsylvania. So we're graduating up to a bigger venue. We're adding on to our seminars and workshops. We're adding in, there's Stop the Bleed,
Stop the
field
bleed
medic
training
stuff, in addition to the police jiu-jitsu, regular jiu-jitsu, gi and no gi. We're going to have speakers such as yourself who's going to be there. We're hoping to add in a fight promotion to the end of the night and really round out the whole event.
Yeah, August 2nd. Grantville, for reference, is just outside of Hershey. It's a nice casino up there. We'll have the entire 4th floor for our event. Anyone that comes will get free slot play at the casino as well. And, coupons for the restaurants and stuff that are there. So like, it's going to be an awesome day of stuff.
I'm really looking forward to it as well, because whenever I travel, I try to bring my family, or at least my wife, so we can have a getaway. And this is one of those things where while I'm doing Seminar Stack, they can go out to Hershey and they can have a good time. And, because that's the whole thing. I actually admire the way you guys sort of lean on each other and you've grown together. So it's really encouraging to watch, because the one thing about police world is they have very unhealthy relationships. And it seems like you guys started out with trauma, which brought you together, but now you're finding this whole new love and this whole new passion by doing all these things together. When we talked on the phone, I didn't just talk with you. Yeah. I talked with both of you. We were on, I guess you guys had the phone on speaker. That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But that's a cool thing. Like most of the times, like, oh, let me put my husband on the phone, and then I'll talk to you, and then I'll talk to you. But no, we talked all together, and it was a great conversation. So I'm looking forward to this event, Seminar Stack, and I can't wait. And as it gets closer and closer, you'll see me start throwing out way more promotion on it. And I'm going to reach out to, I got a couple people maybe throw your way as far as trying to get people involved.
Absolutely. I think the one thing about Seminar Stack that we feel is a little bit different than taking a regular jiu-jitsu seminar is that how we've organized it is that in all of the seminars you can pick and choose. So you can take a police jiu-jitsu seminar for $50. You can take a gi seminar for $50. Like, it's $50 seminars that are 2 hours long each. So you can build your own schedule. And then in addition to that, it's not just closed off. It's open to the public as well. You don't just have to be law enforcement. There are specific law enforcement courses that are only open to them, but the vast majority of them are open to the public, including a free seminar series and workshops that's free for everybody, from health and wellness, so mobility, breath work, there's yoga, all of these things that people can just pop in and take one and then check out what's going on. Maybe go watch some jiu-jitsu. Maybe they're afraid to take it and they want to see it. We're not kicking out spectators, which I think is a little bit different than how some of them work. You pay for the class and there's, no seats allowed. We want people to come and watch. We want them to see the resources that are available. Maybe a security guard's on shift and they can't buy a ticket, but they can pop up and see the gun retention course for 10, 15 minutes and then maybe look into what those courses are, what those businesses are that are running it, and get information from there.
You're trying to grow people individually.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's there's nothing wrong with that at all. So do you have a website where people can go to find all this stuff?
No, we do have a website. It's under construction, unfortunately, but it's just www.seminarstack.com. We're also on Instagram, which is just @seminarstack. So we're working on building those up from, our first year, moving into a bigger space for ourselves. And we'll be making sure that that's, ready to go for everybody.
Do you want to give out your personal social media?
Mine is @bidsgonebeast. Most of it is...
Took me a while to figure out that was you, by the way.
Yeah, most of it is Seminar Stack stuff because it's collab with it, but you can just kind of watch the journey of Kate and I and all of our jiu-jitsu travels and stuff on there.
Yeah, I think mine's KCali087.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
Yeah, sounds right.
And then if you want to follow the nonprofit that we mentioned, that's Adopt A Cop BJJ, and their website is the same, adoptacopbjj.org. It is a completely donation-based run nonprofit. So all the money that we give to officers for their training is from donations. So we have some rash guards and stuff up for sale, some flags. We're working on getting more merch up. And their parent company is Massive Supplements.
Oh, actually, so if you're looking for merchandise, I can help you out with that because I got one of the company that does our T-shirts. He's a police officer as well. He's got a great company.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
I'll definitely hook you up with him. But
Yep.
so Smashing Energy, actually, so the first thing I do, because my wife's a personal trainer and she's a health fanatic, first thing I do is I always take a look at the label. How are you involved with these guys?
So that's part of the Massive Supplements company. It's the parent company of Adopt A Cop. Mitch Aguiar is a retired Navy SEAL. He opened up the supplement company, and then through there, he's also the one that founded Adopt A Cop.
Yeah, he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu as well. Has the supplement company.
Wait, so he's a Navy SEAL and a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu?
He's a scary person. Yeah.
He's probably a nice guy.
Yeah. Great guy.
Yeah, but I don't think I'd want to.
Yeah.
I've had a couple Navy SEALs in here, and they're a different
They're a force.
different type of guys.
They're a force. But these are his companies that he started, and this is their newest product that came out, the Smashing Energy. It's an energy drink alternative.
So what I like that because I got young kids and they're all about the energy drinks, right? But here's the problem: we're watching it. My kids are football players. We're watching it in football where they'll drink energy drinks before, and by the third quarter they're flat. They're done.
Yep.
And they're cramping up in the second quarter, right before halftime, and it's just no good for them. So the fact that you're coming up with an alternative, it's encouraging to me. And I look, there's no sugar in it, which sugar's probably the worst thing.
Everything in that is from the earth. It's all natural ingredients. So it's a big drop for them. They also have a greens powder, which is one scoop of it is your intake of vegetables for the day.
Oh, like what's that one? The alpha greens or something.
Yeah, it's like that, but it tastes better.
Yeah.
It's not a proprietary blend.
So the only reason I'm not trying it, and I can't speak from an example because I do need to eventually get to sleep tonight.
Yes.
So, and I do drink. Yeah. So, but tomorrow morning, I will be drinking this, and I will give you a full report on Smashing Energy.
I hope so.
So, folks, we are coming to the end of this thing. And first of all, I really appreciate you coming in. I really appreciate talking to you. You're great people on the phone, and you're even better in person. But we are coming to the end. Now, you've gone through this suffering of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, this training process, but it comes from a place where it brought you closer together. But it had to have taught you a lesson along the way. So I'm going to ask each of you individually, what has your suffering taught you about this whole journey that you were on?
I think it actually boils down to what my biggest fear is, and that's failing. I hate to fail. It keeps me from doing a lot of things. I think Brazilian Jiu Jitsu has forced me to fail. And in that, I've learned that you can be okay and still fail. It's a really big lesson for me. It's a really hard lesson for me. So I think even now, it's still every time I go, I get a little anxious. I love to go. I love to talk about it. It makes me a little uncomfortable. But I think there's something really great about that discomfort and about forcing yourself to go and to fail, because failing's not always a bad thing.
Failure teaches you way more than success. I have failed dozens of times more than I succeeded. So my favorite quote is Thomas Edison. So Thomas Edison said, he came up with all these different failures for the light bulb. And you know what he said? It was something in a range of like 1,000. He says, all I did was I thought of 1,000 ways not to invent the light bulb. And that always sticks with me because those failures all led to this stuff that we have now. Eric, what do you think? What do you think it's taught you?
Suffering of jiu-jitsu for me, I think I'm going to take it back to police. It gave me a new appreciation for it, a new appreciation for use of force, a new appreciation for control, for de-escalation, and it teaches de-escalation in its own way, whether that's from the confidence that you gain from knowing these skills or whether that's the de-escalation of physically controlling someone until they comply, not breaking their arm and then using that broken arm to put them in handcuffs, but to have them in control and wait, and they have no other option but to comply, or you just keep them there. And so like that kind of teaching of de-escalation and stuff has been a big learning point for me.
Well, I can't wait for Seminar Stack, and I thank you both for coming in tonight. This has been wonderful, and I know you're not the veteran podcasters that you appear to be, but I'm going to tell you what, this is across the board. There are so many different takeaways throughout what it's done for your relationship, what it's done for you mentally, what it's done for you being the wife of a police officer. I think there's so many different things we can take away, and you're doing such great things for the future. It's my hat's off to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, the Suffering of Brazilian Jiu Jitsu with Kate and Eric. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Dating apps actually do work. Trauma can tear you apart or bring you together. Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is the great equalizer. Failure teaches us more than victories, but most importantly, confidence is not instinctual. It must be trained. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for your 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, OnlyFans. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson, and of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. And we'll see you next time.